Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kyrie Bakat, one of your presenters for today's Readings in Philippine History discussion. By the way, I will be accompanied by my three other groupmates, Miss Angeline Bautista, Mr. Reniboy Bangkil, and Miss Bebby Ann Buwar. And we will be tackling one of the current issues in the Philippine country, the SABAH dispute.
The North Borneo dispute, also known the SABAH dispute, is a territorial dispute between Malaysia and the Philippines over much of the eastern part of the state of Sabah. Sabah was previously known as North Borneo prior to the formation of the Malaysian Federation. Sabah is located at the northeastern tip of the Borneo and lies about 500 kilometers from the Philippines. Although Malaysia controls the territory, the Philippines has laid claim over Sabah since 1961. But before we will going to talk about the year-by-year changes of this dispute, let's first tackle about the claim of the both sides, the claim of the Philippines and the claim of Malaysia.
What is the Philippines claim?
The Philippines derives its claim to Sabah from the Sultanate of Sulu, which once ruled the southernmost region of the Philippines. The Sultanate asserts that the territory of North Borneo was a gift from the Sultan of Brunei as a reward for Sulu's aid in a war in the 16th. Manila maintained that the Sultanate's agreement with the British North Borneo Corporation in 1878 was merely a lease, not a transfer of sovereignty. Muezzol Leil Tan Kiram, the sovereigning sultan, told the Nikkei Asian Review that his grandfather agreed to integrate Sulu into an independent Philippines to further his effort to reclaim Sabah. Thus, the Philippines claim was explaining the history and legal basis over Sabah and the origins of the dispute.
How about the claim of Malaysia?
Malaysia's claim over Sabah has been very much depend on the legitimacy, legality, and authenticity of the claims of the UK. More particularly, over Beck and Bent over Sabah, North Borneo based on the 1878 Treaty Grant and Concession and their effects. Since Malaysia was former colony of Britain, Malaysia considered the Philippines' claims over Sabah a non-issue as Sabah in 1963, along with Sarawak and Singapore was part and parcel of the foundation state of the Federation of Malaysia, which according was an act of self-determination by the Sabah populaces. Kuala Lumpur insists the British North Borneo calls payments were installments to purchase the territory from Sulu. In the case, sovereignty was transferred to Malaysia when it succeeded British Malaya.
Now that we already know the claim of the both sides, we will now proceed to the year-by-year changes of this dispute so that we can further understand the root of this issue.
In 1658, the Sultanate of Brunei ceases Sabah to the Sultanate of Sulu after the latter helped quell a civil rebellion in Brunei. In 1878, the Sultanate of Sulu enters into a contract with the British North Borneo Company, where the company continued to occupy Sabah as long as it pays the Sultanate a regular rent of money. 1946, following the end of the Japanese occupation in World War II, the British North Borneo Company relinquishes its duties, and Sabah becomes a British Crown colony. In 1961, Philippine President Diosdado Macapagal initiates the filing of the Philippines' claim of the Sabah after talks of including Sabah in the Federation of Malaysia. In 1962, the heirs of the Sulu Sultan issued a declaration titled Recognition and Authority in Favor of the Republic of the Philippines, which ceded and transferred sovereignty over Sabah to the Philippines. The Republic of the Philippines accepted the cession of sovereignty made by the Sulu Sultan.
In 1963, Sabah joined Malaysia after a referendum was carried out and its people voted overwhelmingly
in support of joining the Federation. Philippines refuses to recognize Malaysia from 1963 to 2012. Malaysia and the Philippines continue talks on Sabah under the diplomatic hostility. Ties break and resume in the process. From the early 1980s onwards, the issue slowly fizzled out, but the Philippines never formally dropped on the matter. In 2013, about 200 armed Filipinos, followers of Malal Kiram III, the self-proclaimed Sultan of Sulu, entered the town in Lahad Dato district of Malaysia's Sabah state on February 11. Ongoing conflict with an Malaysian security forces that has tension running high both sides of Sulu Sea. The men led by the Sultan brothers are pressing their ancestral claim to an area of northern Bruno has been disputed by the Malaysia and the Philippines since independence. In 2016, members of Charter changed the consultative committee. Aquilino Pimentel included the Sabah as part of the Philippine territory on his proposal. I urges Filipino government to assert the country's claim to Sabah.
Resolutions recommendations.
Talking about the resolutions regarding this issue, we must understand that we have all the rights to pursue the claim on Sabah. It belongs to the territory of the Philippines, and it is our duty to preserve our territorial integrity. The fact that the Malaysian government still pays rent to the Sultans of Sulu is proof that we are the lessor and they are the lessee. And we have the authority or the power to terminate the lease agreement if there is the failure of the lessee to comply with terms and conditions of the contract. In this case, it appears that the rent is insufficient and there are several violations of the terms of the contract. Therefore, we should terminate the contract and pursue the Sabah claims legally in the International Court of Justice or ICJ.
Indeed, the Sabah dispute between the Philippines and Malaysia remain unsolved until today, fundamentally because of the contending claim on the 1878 treaty between the Sultanate of Sulu and the British North Borneo Company, or the British government for that matter. But ours is ours, so we must fight for it. We need to pursue it legally, diplomatically, historically, and of course, peacefully. We must pursue the Sabah claim for historical and cultural reasons while taking consideration the security of the Filipino in southern Philippines and in Sabah itself. We cannot drop our claim with regard to Sabah because by historic right and legal title, that is ours. It is embedded in our constitution under the definition of our national territory. We need to recognize that Sabah belongs to the territory of the Philippines. However, there's some policy that were made before that undermined or emasculated some of this right to take extended the Kiram family even went or tried to go to Sabah to assert their claim, and unfortunately, many of them and their relatives died. But of course, we want to pursue peace, and I hope that ASEAN will provide the needs so that everything will be settled well. But if the Philippines representing the Sultanate of Sulu is not filing more recent complaint to get it back and the ASEAN is silent about it, nothing will happen. But as I remember, there's an MNSI senatorial debate that happened in this year 2022, and there they discusses that we must pursue the Sabah claim. And in that I concluded that Philippines should file a diplomatic note on Sabah's return. We know that it is very difficult now to solve the said issue regarding Sabah, but there will always be a diplomatic way to resolve it. Philippine government should provide support to Kiram family. They must go decision making to weigh and consider the relevant solution in it. Even though our fight with regard to Sabah was not consistent, but I believe this time, Philippine authority should have a full cooperation to get back what really belongs to us in accordance of law. With this, we can gradually resolve it. Again, ours is ours, so we must fight for it.
You.